Tell me about the expectations of parents and kids as they come in, pitchers who want to increase their velocity. What do people expect out of a given off season? Like where are people at these days?
Whenever new athletes come in, we'll ask them what their goals are for the off season, or if they want to gain velocity, we'll ask them where they're at now, where they want to be. So a lot of times it's just, if they throw in the 70s, I want to get to 80. If they throw in the 80s, I want to get to 90. It's just that next magic number. Sometimes they'll have, I want to gain 2 or 3 or 5. Usually it's around in that range. Sometimes we'll get people that come in and they just have really unrealistic expectations where they throw 81, 82, and they say they want to hit 90, and it's just, we have 2-3 months. So that's a tall ask.
In one off season?
Yeah,
that's a lot.
That's a tall ask, and I think we're very upfront with people about what they can actually realistically expect. We're not going to make promises that they can gain X amount of miles an hour. We'll kind of tell them, look, we'll lay out the process for you. If you follow this process to the T, you will likely gain between this and this. But you know how it is. You can't really make promises to people of specific numbers. That said,
when they're going through puberty, that's when they might gain 10 miles per hour.
Well, that's true.
But that's not realistic. That's just from that one time where their body's basically doing steroids.
Yeah. If they're going through a growth spurt and they're hitting puberty at that time, you might gain
45 to 85.
Yeah.
Well, in 2 years, and you grew 70 pounds and went,
Yeah, those will skew the data a little bit.
Yeah, I love those testimonials.
I think for the most part now, people are a little bit more educated in terms of what's realistic from an off season, what they can actually gain. College guys will come in, they say they want to gain maybe 1 or 2 miles an hour, which in an off season you might be able to do that. High school kids usually send that 3 to 5 range, which realistically you could. If you can identify a mechanical flaw where they're leaking energy, where you can just kind of see that they're not moving as aggressively as they could, you can maybe bump that up pretty easily.
Yeah.
The trick is, and it's the same with everything, it's just trying to figure out what is holding each person back from hitting their goals, and then what's your plan for attacking what they have. So kind of leveraging their strengths, taking their weaknesses and making them be less of weaknesses. But I think there's always a way to gain some velocity, unless you're really at an elite level throwing 105 miles an hour. But I think there's always some way you can figure out to get a little bit more out of your body.
Yeah, but then again, not everyone and that's what's weird is I think today people see all the guys in college throwing 92, 94, 95, and then they think, well, that's what every college player gets to. But there's a whole staff of pitchers, and a lot of those pitchers, even on good D1s, don't consistently throw in the 90s, and they never get there.
Yep.
And they're all doing the same program. You can certainly work harder or work less hard, but you're still doing the program. You're showing up to practice, you're getting you're doing all the stuff, and they don't get there. You know, people forget that. It's not every pitcher from any given SEC school, they don't all get drafted.
Yeah.
More than half of them don't. And it's it's not always a velocity issue, but usually if you throw 92 or above, you're going to get drafted these days. But yeah, people just think that you just keep gaining and gaining and gaining forever, and that's not what the real world shows.
Yeah.
And part of that's because of injuries and stuff. You might be consistently going up, but then maybe tweak your elbow, or you tweak something, and now you kind of go back and your mechanics are a little bit lost, and you get, that happens so often. We had a teammate in college, and he was throwing 94 as a freshman, and he graduated throwing 88, because he had a partial UCL tear, didn't get Tommy John, just rehabbed it, and came back, but he never regained his form. His mechanics were clearly different, and it's sometimes you just kind of wander off course of your mechanics and you never find them again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in high school it's complicated because you have different coaches telling you different stuff. You might work on something all winter, and then your high school coach changes you or wants you to change, or I don't know. It's a velocity that's complicated.
Yeah.
Because I had a kid years ago who he hit 90 for the first time as a 17-year-old, a young 17-year-old, early in his senior year in that winter. And then he graduated, pitched at Tulane, and he was 87 to 89, 90 then, 5 years later. And that was in part because he had some arm issues. His coaches tried to change him at junior college. And when I went and saw him pitch a couple years, like a year and a half after he graduated, like I really recognized him. He was like always like a normal, like typical over the top arm slot. When I saw him, he was like closing in on sidearm. And it wasn't because he just changed to change. It was because his mechanics, like his lower body mechanics had changed, and his arm action and his arm slot dropped because of it.
Yeah.
And it dropped because he said it felt easier on his shoulder. Like his shoulder hurt less when he was throwing for a lower slot. So he used to like a lot of problems, just a lot of ongoing problems that his pitching coaches didn't fix and his body compensated for. And he just like, this was a kid who always had a good arm since he was little, like always threw hard. And had like his plateaus and his ups and downs, but again, 90 at a young, he was always like almost a full grade younger. And so him hitting 90 as a senior was like hitting 90 as a junior for most people. Like he was a hard thrower, and then just never kept going. So it just is never linear, and you just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that is true.
Do you do weighted ball stuff?
We do with some people. We will give guys the option if they want to do some weighted ball stuff. We'll find a way for them to do it. If they say they don't want to do it, we don't make them do it. We will do some weighted ball throws. We don't do high volume throws, high intent, high volume throws with the weighted balls or the underweight balls. I think we're doing it in a way that is safe, and I feel good about it. Sometimes kids get carried away with high intent throwing, and they do way too much because they're chasing velocity. And when you have a really high workload and you don't recover from it, that's when you're going to get the injuries. So we can use, we use pulse sensors to track stress on the arm, and we can kind of plot out acute and chronic workload ratios that are within, to our best knowledge, a safe zone. And that's kind of how we do it. And I think that's probably the best way to do it, is actually have a specific plan of how to gradually increase the workload that your arm is exposed to. So that's going to have a prophylactic effect where if you expose your arm or your body, really any part of your body, to gradually more stress at a time, and you can kind of increase then decrease and kind of undulate the stress, your body builds up kind of a, maybe not inoculation isn't the word, but it builds up the ability to withstand those stresses. It adapts over time.
I love a well-inoculated, well-prophylactic arm.
So, I mean, it's like anything else. The weighted balls are a tool. I think they can be abused, and they are abused very often. If you use them in a way that I think is scientifically sound, and you have an actual rationale, and you have some data supporting what you're doing, then you can feel pretty good about it. My big thing is, maybe this is everybody's big thing, but you just never want to have anybody get hurt from doing any kind of training program, whether that's sprinting, they pull a hamstring.
You got to scramble those eggs to make some omelets.
Well, yeah, some people do say that, and it's kind of insane.
Oh, hits the bag.
Nice. But yeah, everything we do, like even on the training side, we plot out our sprint distances and intensities to make sure nobody's doing too much sprinting too soon, so they don't pop a hammy or a quad. We plot out the throwing loads for our pitchers so they don't pop a forearm flexor or like produce too much stress on the UCL.
Or get chronic tennis elbow like I have right now.
You have a chronic tennis elbow?
Yeah, it feels terrible.
How did you get that?
I don't know.
Tennis elbow's on the outside, right?
Yeah. It feels horrible right in there.
From swinging?
I don't know.
It's gotta be.
I honestly don't know.
It's weird.
It did crop up after I started playing slow pitch, but it's why would that do it? But now it's like, if I hold my phone like this too long, it's like,
that's not good.
It's not going away.
Yeah, I think the thing with the weighted ball conversation kind of goes into the broader conversation of like velocity development for youth athletes and how much of it is beneficial versus being damaging down the line. Whether it's really important, how hard they throw at 12, 13, 14 years old. Personally, I don't think it's incredibly important how hard a kid throws when they're very young. I do think there is some benefit to learning how to move efficiently and have like, I guess you'd call them like good throwing mechanics where you can utilize your body to produce higher velocities. And I think that's great. But then again, like if you produce higher velocities when you throw, you're going to produce higher stress on the arm.
Bingo.
Yeah.
That's what people email me all the time. They're like, how can I help my kid have safe mechanics? I'm like, it's literally the opposite effect. The better mechanics they get, the more the stress they put on their arm,
Yep.
the more likely they are to blow out their arm.
Yep.
Like if this was a thing, there'd be no major leaguers hurt. But they're hurt more than anyone because they're not really overused. They just throw so hard and accumulate that stress. It's just such a thing. And it's important to educate people. It's like,
Yeah.
the better you are, the more, it's like being like a elite ocean swimmer. It's like the more time you put in the ocean, the more likely you are to encounter a great white that's going to eat you.
Yeah. So, and there's always kind of you got to weigh the risk reward of any activity you do when you're training people. So, I mean, an athlete you get who, let's say maybe like an indie ball pitcher and they're trying to get back into affiliated ball, they're a little bit older. They have,
You could be aggressive because they're like an old cow, It's like, we're going to put you out to pasture anyway, or
well, it's like,
grind you up into McDonald's patties.
well, as long as as long as they know, we're going to be like aggressive with your training. We know based on like MLB averages, like you need to be at this velocity, and here's how we think we can do it. You'd be a lot more aggressive with that guy than say a 12-year-old kid who,
Yeah, you don't know their ceiling anyway.
like, I want to throw 70 when I go into middle school. It's like, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Like, it'll be fine.
Well, you also don't want to jump the gun because, like, you don't know where their ceiling would be naturally without all this extra stuff anyway.
Yeah.
Like, if you just, like, most kids when they're training well and they're improving their mechanics, they'll add 4 to 6 miles per hour per year for those, like, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 years. So they're throwing 60 when they're 13. They're going to be throwing 85 when they're a senior. That's excellent.
Yep.
And that's just from just like mechanics and strength training and arm care probably. It's like, so, and then if you give it a couple more years, maybe they get to 92 as a college junior and then they get drafted. So it's like, do we need to be ultra aggressive when we don't know that you might get there on your own anyway?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah.